What is up, Scrub Familia? Pat back again with the final part of our Dragon Brawl limited review. Today we're going to talk about the multicolor cards as well as the black cards and all those reprints for the black cards as well that are contained in Draft Box 4. As you guys can tell from the lack of headset, I kind of leveled up my game. I decided I would spring for a new microphone. Hopefully it sounds alright. If it's a market improvement over my usual videos, please let me know in the comments down below. Would really like to know if it's good. Speaking of leveling up your game, check out beardedcollectibles.com. Alec Pastrana is going to have the best prices for you guys on Draft Box 4. He's our wonderful sponsor here at 3XG Productions as well as Shenron's Lair team. I see all this conversation online about how Draft Box 4 is not really going to impact the meta in any sort of way, and I think that's wrong. So definitely get your pre-orders in for either through Bearded or your local game shop, or at least at the very least get some singles from the set for decks you want to play. There are many archetypes that are going to be really good coming out of this draft box, and going into nationals you're really going to want those cards. I can think of off the top of my head, there's like a green Chilai hand control deck that people are not talking about. Great Apes is a viable archetype that people are not talking about. There's many leaders as well that are probably going to make either a resurgence, such as U7 Frieza, because there's so many Universe 7 cards in this set. Point is, cards are very good. Speaking of very good, we grade cards here on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the absolute best, 1 being the worst. 5 is a playable, which is you want to usually shoot for 5 or better. If you can help it, 7 or more is usually what we want for a competitive tournament winning draft box deck. So with that out of the way, let us get right into the cards, starting with the black cards. So first up is Son Goku Striking True, 2 cost 10k. Choose 2 skillless battle cards in your drop area and send them to your warp. When you play this card, choose it to one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it. So this is basically removal for any deck that is desperate to get it at a lesser drop, or I should say like a lesser rarity, common, uncommon. These kinds of effects are usually necessary as like lower end playables in decks. For those of you guys, if you just don't have an answer, this card I feel like is largely going to be relegated to sideboard status unless you just have a critical mass of skillless cards. There are a lot in the set, but only the 20s and 30ks are really worth talking about and playing. So yeah, I think this is a lower end playable. Like I said, it's just if you have the cards, go for it. I think I would give Goku a 5. A 5, excuse me. He is a really good card. If you just are lacking removal, and there's no harm in, again, sideboarding him. I would say he's probably like somewhere between 38th, 39th, 40th playable, something where it's just the tail end of your deck if you have it. You really want to have at least 3 skillless cards, by the way, in your deck before you play this card. He comes down late game for cheap and removes a threat. Next up, we have Trunks Dimensional Sniper, which is such a cool name. Card art's pretty good too. 3 costs for a 15k, but you're not going to play him for that. You're going to play him for his Overwhelm. 3 costs. When you play this card using Overwhelm, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with 3 or less and send it to its owner's warp. For an uncommon, this is outstanding. 0 cost for a 15k free attacker, and you get to remove one of your opponent's guys from the game. It's not even like you put it in the drop, because again, there's cards like Gohan that pick this card back up from the drop, or other cards from the drop if they were to kill it. But point is, warping it, it's just gone for good. It's not coming back. So that 3 costs like 30k General Rildo, it's done. It's not coming back, and you can't even use it to fuel this card like the Goku that we talked about. I think that there's almost no reason to not take this uncommon if it's past you, unless there are just strictly better choices in the pack. I'm gonna give Trunks an 8 and a high one at that. Like, you really should only be taking rares and super rares over Trunks. Next up is Dende Cry of the Soul, 1 cost, black, 4k. When it comes into play, choose one. Either draw a card or choose one of your skillless battle cards with an energy cost of 1. It gets plus 10k power for the duration of the turn. That second effect is basically irrelevant. If you've been watching most of these videos, 1 cost 10ks, don't cut it. They're barely playable. You're usually playing this card for its draw 1 effect most of the time, and that is about a playable 1 drop. So as far as playables go, he gets an average mark of a 5. Next up, we have Mira, Assault from the Skies. 7 cost is steep, but you're not going to be playing him for that. He has Overwhelm 7 for 1 cost. He is a 0-5k combo, which is a mistake. There should be some drawback on this card. 30k Double Strike. When you play this card, draw a card, and at the start of your opponent's next main phase, choose one of your energy and switch to active. 30k Double Strike for 1 is obscene, and every deck can play this card. This card comes out of nowhere and basically ends the game on the spot, and it could be even in an aggro deck. You could see this as early as turn 2 or turn 3 if your opponent's really just going to try and kill you. Make sure they end the game really quickly. I see almost no reason if you open Mira to not play Mira. I think he's one of the best rares generically in the entire set. That's both for draft and constructed. I'm going to give Mira a 9. Conversely, Fu Mission Accomplished is really bad in draft. I know this card's probably pretty cool in constructed. I know Peter Catani is a fan of this card. 2-drop 10k is meh stats. He's also colorless, so he doesn't even give you colors for charging, which is a further knock against him. Activate main, pay 2 colors, remove this card in your drop area from the game. Choose up to 1 black battle card in your drop area or warp area with an energy cost of 7 or less and add it to your hand. So this would be really cool as like a techie option to get back this Mira and loop this Mira that you, if you end up opening it in draft. The problem is that Fu is a rare and Mira is a rare, and Mira is like the only target really worth talking about in the draft box for Fu Mission Accomplished. So yeah, it's kind of like a miss. Like this really should have been an uncommon. I don't know why it's a rare. I don't think that rarity upshifting this card helps in any way. In fact, it really just hurts its playability. And I would just honestly avoid this card at all costs. I would give Fu a 3. Like, there's probably some cool combos you could do, but they're few and far between. And his pick overall, I feel like, is such low value because you have to have other black cards. And black has less cards than any of the other colors that you could be taking. So, yeah, I don't see any real upside to Fu. That said, this other card here with Fu on it, Remote Serious Bomb, aka Cruel Edict. It is an edict effect for Magic. You pay 1, activate main, your opponent chooses one of their battle cards and sends it to its owner's warp. Unfortunately, the ruling in this game is that it doesn't get around barrier because it's still your skill, even though your opponent is choosing the card, which I feel like is a huge miss. And it's something I'd like to see Bandai fix in the future because the whole point of edicts is they're supposed to get around Indestructible, Hexproof, and Shroud, which are basically the barrier cards and the indestructible cards. This would have been a perfect answer to those cards. That said, 1 cost to kill one of your opponent's guys, even if it is their choice. Most of the best players in this format are going to be playing only bombs anyway, so no matter what you get, you're getting paid dividends. Any deck can play this, and it costs 1. Are you kidding me? I think this card is a high 8. It can't win you the game, so it's not worthy of being a 9 or a 10, but this is an excellent card. I would pick up at least 2 of these cards in every deck if they get past you. There's just no reason. Also, this card is just a good card in general to take early on in the draft because it keeps you open. You're not committing to a hard color. You're not like saying like taking like a red rare and then you don't see any rares and it just doesn't pan out. Remote Serious Bomb is a value pick that will get, no matter what deck you're playing, it will pay dividends. So definitely, if you just don't know what to take in a pack, Remote Serious Bomb is one of those first cards you should be looking for. Burning Slash. So this is a 1-cost counter. Yes, you can't negate this card's skill, so if there's like another battering or something, there's nothing in the draft box that affects this, and there's nothing outside of Cooler, Marcus's favorite card, that actually would stop this card. But this is just a generic negate that any color can play. And I know I've given some of the lesser negates a 7 in favor of the better negates at an 8, but I'm going to give this card an 8 simply for the same reasons with Remote Serious Bomb that we just talked about. It is a safe pick that you can pretty much always take, and every deck will get value out of it, and it's at a common, which means you'll most likely see roughly 2 of these go around the table. So yeah, pretty good card overall. Now we move into the multicolor cards. So as a forward to the multicolor cards when we talk about them, multicolor cards, as good as some of these cards I'm about to talk to you about are, you should not be taking these first pick unless you are really confident that you are already in the archetype. So, for example, we'll talk about Champa and Beerus. If you take this pack 1, pick 1 as the first card you take in your entire draft, and then you were proceeded to only be past blue and yellow cards, you have wasted a pick. Yes, this card is very powerful, and it is a really good card, but you are wasting your pick. You are going to be forcing yourself to go into an inconsistent tri- or quad-color deck, rather than just taking safe cards. And once you know you're in, like, if you are heavy in just one color, like if you're heavy in red, then it's safe to take this card because you could splash, like 5 or 6 green cards to make this card a reality, and you could actually use it. If you are safely in the colors, by all means, just take it. If for nothing else, it is fixing for your colors. But do not take these multicolor cards as your first pick in your first pack. It's okay to take it as a first pick in like your 3rd or 4th pack once you are clearly in the 2 colors that it represents. Or if you were feeling ambitious, you could use it to splash into a lesser color with 4 or 5 like 1-drops or 1 symbols. If you wanted to go into a 3-color deck, that is something that these cards will let you do. Like if you're already heavy in, say, like green and blue, but you happen to have, from an earlier pack picked up, say, a couple of intensifying power trunkses that just didn't pan out for you, then yes, you could splash this card and use those, couple of red cards that will allow you to branch into a third color to play this card. You have to be very smart and use your head when you're drafting these cards. They're not exactly very straightforward. You don't want to accidentally waste a pick. So with that out of the way, let's continue and talking about them. So Champa and Beerus is the red-green one. There's one for each color combination. They all have 110k combo power, which is nice. Has Arrival for red-green. Arrival is obviously a very strong keyword. Energy Exhaust, just like all these cards are going to have. When you play this card, choose it to one of your opponent's battle cards with 20k power or less and KO it. Then choose one of your other battle cards with an energy cost of 6 or less, which is basically everything that's playable. Give it double strike. So you get, for the 2 cards out of your hand, plus this card. So if you -3 from hand, you're going to get a 20k body on board, which is solid. You get to kill a guy. You don't get to kill the best things in the format, but you get to kill most things. Like 95% of things will die to this card, which is nice. And almost every battle card you play that is not this card, if you have at least one other guy on board, it will get double strike. So there is some inherent value in playing this on your turn. I think that this card is really good. I do not think it is like the end-all, be-all, but I can see you doing a lot worse. You have to keep in mind that this card, it costs you 3 cards from your hand most of the time, because you're not going to have 2 of these. So for that reason, I'm going to give Champa and Beerus a 7. It's a high 7, probably not. It could be a light 8. It is removal. It does give double strike and it will end the game, but it is very taxing on your hand. This is a opportunistic card. You have to basically find the right moment to use it, and it will win you the game. But those moments I feel like are not as common as some of the other cards that I gave 8s and 9s that can close out a game easier. Next up is Son Goku and Vegeta, Saiyan Bonds. 4 costs 20k. This one is double 2 Arrival costs. When you play this card, draw one card, then choose it to one of your opponent's battle cards and negate its skills for the duration of the turn. I think this card is pretty weak in draft. You're paying 3 cards plus 2 energy. You recoup one of the cards, which is nice, but all you really get out of it is you get to negate a skill. It's a 20k vanilla for 4, which is just an okay rate. The only effect you actually care about negating on your turn is blocker. Like if you use this on their turn, odds are they have an auto that triggered when they attacked or when they played it. So I feel like the applications of this card are few and far between. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of this guy. I'm going to give it a low 6, possibly a high 5 as the lower end grading scale for it. It's probably safe to say it is a low end 6 though. Next up is King Vegeta and Vegeta, Royal Bloodline. 4 costs, 20k. Arrival for red yellow. You pay 1 yellow, obviously. So again, this is a 3 cards Arrival. When you play it, you get to draw a card, then choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode with energy cost of 3 or less and KO it. So this card is really nice because unlike Champa and Beerus, you are actually only paying 2 cards for this most of the time. And again, most things in the format are going to die to this. So it's basically very similar in rating to that card, just because even though the only upside that the Champa Vados really has, or I should not say Champa Vados, the Champa Beerus has over this card is that it gives another card double strike. Me personally, I would rather have this card because it's, it actually lets you have the extra card in your hand. The quantity of cards you have in your hand in draft is everything. Falling behind is not a good thing. So I'm inclined to, like this card a little bit more. That said, I'm still only going to give it a high 7, simply because, I still think it's better than Champa and Beerus, but only barely. It's not enough for me to want to give it an 8 because it doesn't just end the game. Again, 4 costs 20k is an okay rate. Next up, we have Son Goku and Son Gohan, Saiyans of Earth. 5 costs for a 25k Arrival for 2 colors. When you play this card, choose it to one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost of 5 or less, place it in its owner's energy area in rest mode. Then your opponent chooses 1 card in their hand and places it in their drop area. So this is hard removal for 99% of things in the format. It is 25k, so it's significantly beefier. Yes, it ramps your opponent, but it also, between the combination of bigger guy than standard cost. So paying 2 for a 25k is much better than paying 2 for a 20k. You technically are spending 3 cards, but your opponent is minusing 1 as well, so it kind of evens out there, and it is hard removal. Of the Arrival cycle, I like this one the best. I think it is the most useful overall, even though it is probably the hardest one to pull off. It has the the highest upside, and that makes me like it the most. So I'm going to give it a light 8. Again, a lot of these arrival cards are very taxing, but this one, it feels like it stands slightly taller than the rest. Next up, we have Hercule and Majin Buu Friends Forever. 3 cost 19k are actually pretty solid stats for a 3-drop. Arrival for 1. When you play this card, draw 1 card, then choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards. It gets minus 10k power for the duration of the turn. Then at the end of the turn, choose up to one of your red or blue battle cards other than this card and return it to its owner's hand. So, I actually like this card a lot. I think if I had to pick, this might be the second best one, just because Arrival is what you're usually thinking when you see these dual color cards. So paying 3 is not something that's super exciting to try and get max value out of it, because otherwise they're just okay rate for 4. Playing this for 3, this is actually a 20k basically for 3, which is a good rate, and it replaces itself. It draws you a card. It kills a lesser battle card, and the minus 10k power actually lets this card pressure cards in rest mode pretty easily and overtake them. Like if your opponent has a big 30k, minus 10ing it will allow you to actually put some actual pressure on it, and not have to spend too many cards for it. Being able to recycle 1-drops also lets you get some pretty sweet combo plays, some value out of some of the lesser 1-drops, such as Kainsei and Son Goku. There's quite a lot of drops that you can get for him. So I actually like casting this card for 3, and it's a much more solid, I think, 3-drop than, you don't really want to play it as an Arrival. I think it's a pretty solid card. I would give it probably a high 7 to a low 8. I think it is probably the second best one in the cycle in terms of just its playability, simply because it doesn't really have to be Arrival for value, whereas I feel like most of these other cards are just okay 4-drops for their value. Next up is Krillin and Android 18 Power Couple. 4 costs 20k. Arrival for a green. When you play it, choose one of the following. Your opponent chooses 1 card in their hand and place it in the drop area, or choose a keyword skill in one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode and negate it for the duration of the turn. So it's either a God Strike Beerus or your opponent drops 1 card. I really like this card in Constructed. I am mixed on it though in Limited. I think it is a pretty cool card, and it can be a blowout that saves the game for you, but I feel like overall it has pretty low value compared to some of the other options that we were talking about. Like, it's definitely got more value than Son Goku and Vegeta, but I don't feel like it can really do as much damage as King Vegeta or Champa and Beerus. That said, I still think it is a playable card and does have good niches. I wouldn't even feel too bad about hard casting this for 4. I think this is, of the cycle, the one I'd be second least likely to be upset about hard casting. So again, I'd probably give this card somewhere between a strong 6 to a light 7. It is pretty good. Like all these Arrivals cards, they are pretty solid. And this one requires, I think, a little bit of extra planning and effort, and it can win you the game, and it is pretty devastating if like your opponent swings at you with like a triple striker and you negate it and kind of just like punish them really hard there. So like there are some really sick scenarios for this card. I am super excited to play this card in Constructed. I think it's really good in Chilai. I think it's really good in Clash of Fates Goku. So I definitely think this is a card is worth picking up for you guys. I just don't know how I feel about it in draft. Like I said, I think it's probably the second worst of the cycle. So now let's move on to the duo power rares. First up, we have Vegeta Saiyan Tag Team. 4 costs for 20k, but you're not going to be using it for that. Activate Battle. You pay 1, choose one of your Universe 6 or 7 cards that's being attacked. It gets plus 6k power until the end of the turn, and then you play this card. And it can't be played for the rest of the turn. Not like you're going to have more than one of these cards. Anyway, excuse me. So, yeah, if you have a critical mass of Universe 6s and 7s, if you have somewhere between like 10 and 15 of these cards, this is like an auto pickup. Man, 1 cost for 20k is great. The only knock against this card is that your opponent has to be attacking a Universe 6 or 7 card to get the actual ability to play it for free. But even then, 4 costs 20k, like we just said, it is generically playable. That's enough to get you at least to 7, like we talked about with the Arrival cards. But if your opponent is attacking into a 2-drop, or most of the super rares, or I should say, and rares like the Lavum are Universe 6 or Universe 7, so you're going to get some value out of that. I am inclined to give Vegeta an 8 just because he is a 1 cost 20k in the scenarios that you want to use him in. Yes, I know your opponent has to attack a Universe 6 or 7 card, which is, again, a knock against it, but there's not that much hard removal compared to Constructed for draft. So usually when you are trying to get things off the board, you have to attack into them. Like a strategy that is tried and true is just to keep your opponent off battle cards the entire time and slowly grind them out with your 15Ks. It will work most of the time. This strategy, or this card directly counters that strategy, which makes me think it's a very strong card. Speaking of strong cards, this card doesn't look like it, but Kaba Saiyan Tag Team is our next card. 3 costs, 19k for a blocker with barrier, and at the end of your turn, you switch it to active mode. So this is a rarity upshifted card, which we've talked about in previous videos. This card, if it was at an uncommon or even a rare rarity, I think it would warp it so that the format would be more skewed towards red. This card is pretty much incredible just because it's a free block. Like every turn, you just get to swing with this card, and you still get to have some kind of defense. It is a really, really, really strong blocker, and it's probably the best blocker in the set next to Frieza. And for that reason, I'm going to give it a low 9 like I gave Frieza, just because it's like your opponent has to... If they're going to only swing with a 15k leader, you can block with this every turn. And if you can just protect it, you're just getting max value. They can't hard remove it, and it's just a free swing every turn while being able to keep the shields up. I really like these kind of cards, and I think they're very strong in draft. Next up is Uneasy Alliance Son Goku. This is another really strong card. I think this is going to be a constructed all-star. So 2 costs for a 15k is good rate. It is about where we want to be. Counterattack, negate the attack, then play this card. So for 2 energy, I get to negate an attack, and then I get to play a 15k. That's pretty sweet. When you play it, choose up to 1 battle card other than this one with an energy cost of 3 less and return it to its owner's hand. That is unparalleled utility. So I get to remove either one of my opponent's guys, or I get to recycle a 1 cost, or potentially protect a card in rest mode. Like my opponent's on yellow, and I know they have a kill spell that will kill something in rest mode. I can save it. This card is nuts, like absolutely nuts. This is probably my favorite of all of the Dragon rares, or Duo Power rares. I'm sorry, like this card is just great. Overall, it protects your life. Good on stats. Even if you just hard cast it for 2, its removal, it just does it all, man. It's a great card. I'm going to give Goku a 9 out of 10. It's a light one. It's not going to win you the game, or it's not going to seem like an obvious card that wins you the game, but this card is just unparalleled value, and the tempo that it will make way for will definitely win you the game. Next up is Uneasy Alliance Frieza. 2 costs 15k is a good rate. When you play it, you draw a card, which is solid, but its other effect is when it is returned to your hand, you get to choose one of your opponent's battle cards and also return it to your hand. So as far as I know, there's only 2 cards that will work with this. One is the other Duo Power Rare and at the time of this video, I believe it is confirmed there's like 3 Duo Power Rares per box. So the odds that you will get the Frieza and the Goku in one draft is pretty much next to nothing. In a pod, it's just not going to happen. Like every once in a while, it will happen, and in that case, I strongly encourage you to take the card. But other than that, like unless you have 2 desperate measures in your deck, this card is not worth like really trying to go for that extra effect. Think of it more as like icing on the cake. I would still play the card. I'm gonna give Frieza a 7 out of 10 because it's just an average 2-drop that I'd be okay to play in my decks. But don't ever really think of that second ability as like coming up all that often. Desperate measures is the most common way it's gonna happen. So when that happens, you'll get pretty sick value out of it in that case. Next up, we have Son Gohan, Master and Pupil. So this is a 3 cost 5k, terrible stats, but you're not playing it for that. You're playing it for Activate Main, pay a green, send this card from your hand to your warp. At the end of your opponent's next turn, play this card and send that you sent to the warp with this skill from your warp. So when you play it, you get to take up to 2 cards from your life and add them to your hand. All right, straight up, I'm just going to tell you right now, it's a 9. And you're probably like, what? This 3 costs 5k, how does that help me win the game? There's no self-awakening in this format. You are playing a vanilla leader. Your opponent can stall you. They can kill board you. Self-awakening is worth a lot. And this is the premium self-awakening tool. If you're in green, you want to take this. Unfortunately, like, I hate the knock on green, but man, like it just feels like Bandai just doesn't give green good tools at lower rarities in draft. This set, green is probably the best color and yet the worst color because like all of the stuff that makes green nuts is like you'll see maybe 1 copy if you're lucky in an entire draft, and that's not enough to consistently win a tournament. But this is one of those green cards like Piccolo, like Zamasu that you should be taking if it's passed to you or you open it, just because it's the best self-awakener in the format. There isn't really much else besides the 1-drops that take life and your Furious Yell Vegeta, which is why I gave it such a high grade in the green video. Next up, we have Piccolo, Master and Pupil, 2 cost for a 15k burst 3, so you're not worried about decking out. Look up the top 5 cards, choose up to 1 battle card with a combo power of 10k amongst them, and add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. 2 cost 15k is a good rate, and you know, spoiler alert, almost every good card that does end the game or add some power is a 1 cost 10k. You won't have a ton of them, but when you think about the 10Ks in the format that you will be playing, they're your arrival cards, which are energy fixing. They are your 5 and 6 drops that end the game. They are your self-awakening cards like Furious Yell Vegeta. So you do want to actually have this card. This is a really solid 2-drop because it lets you find powerful cards that will let you end the game later on. And for that reason, I'm going to give Piccolo an 8. I think he is a very, very good and solid pickup. Even in Constructed, I think he is a pretty solid card. Okay, so next up we have Bardock, Father and Son. This card is stupid. Activate main if your leader card is yellow, your opponent has 3 or more energy, and you don't have this card in play. You get to switch a card to rest mode, and then play this card from your hand. So this is free. It's literally free. You get a free 2-drop 15k, and you get to switch a card to rest mode. So this either bypasses blockers for free and gets you a free swing on your opponent's life, or anything that's problematic that they are keeping back, you can just switch it to rest mode and you get free swings at it all day. The thing is also, like, your leader's going to be yellow. You don't this card, since it's no cost and you have to have it be as a yellow leader and everybody's rainbow leader. This is very akin to what we were talking about with the Great Ape Goku. Is it's just free real estate. You just play it in everything. There's almost no reason to not take it. So for that reason, I'm going to give Bardock a 9, just because it's a free Crusher Ball with a free. You get a free 15k and a Crusher Ball for nothing. No matter what deck, there's no deck that doesn't want that. Like, it's a free battle card. By the way, if it's not already obvious with the rating of the 9 there, it's because you get free aggro. So free aggro wins games. 4 cost, Son Goku, Father and Son is the next card. So it's a 15k blocker, which is solid. We like blockers. If your opponent has 3 or more energy and it's not in play in your battle area, when an opponent's battle card is switched to rest mode by a skill, activate the skill. You may play this card from your hand. So it's a free blocker. But this one, unlike Bardock, you basically have to be in yellow because all the yellow cards are the ones that switch to rest mode. And there's not too many of them. I think it's like basically like the 2 and 3 drop, Shugesh and Kid Vegeta, as well as Crusher Ball. So like if you got a surplus, like I'd say if you have like 3 or 4, maybe 5 effects is probably where I'd say, probably about 5. If you have about 5 rest mode effects, this card will realistically come into play for free. Paying 4 for a 15k blocker is not worth it. It is still a free blocker, and if you are heavy in yellow with the yellow control cards, I encourage you to pick it up and take it. So for that reason, I'm going to give Goku a 7. Next up, we have SS3 Tag Team SS3 Tag Team Son Gohan. Even though it looks like Goku, it is apparently future Gohan. So he is a 4-cost 15k blocker. We already talked about this. That's not really a good rate. I don't really like that much. What it does have is auto. When a black battle card is removed from play from your battle area by a skill, activate the skill. You may play this card from your hand. This is very similar to the Goku we just talked about. If you have like no or 1 Overwhelm card, I would give this card like a 5, maybe a 6, simply because it is a blocker, so that's worth something, but it's a really overcosted blocker, and there's a lot of blockers that that are at the 4-cost rare level in terms of cost, so just not really feeling it. That said, if you have like 3 or 4 Overwhelm cards, then this card is significantly better, and you will get it for free. I just think it's not as consistent because you need like 3 or 4 cards realistically to proc this card. And the best one is the one we'll be talking about next, and the second best one is pretty much Mira at a rare level. So yeah, not too many targets, and if you do have a lot of targets, your deck probably can't utilize all of them. Like 4 Overwhelms in a 40 card deck when you have no self milling is really rough. So yeah, this card at best, if you have like 3 or 4 Overwhelms, is like a 7. I think 6 is probably though the right call. And for the final duo power rare, we have SS3 Tag Team Trunks. It is a 3-cost 15k, but you are going to obviously pay it for 0 because it has Overwhelm 3. When you play it via Overwhelm, it gets critical, and then it has Activate Battle. Choose 1 card in your hand and send it to the Warp. This card gets Double Strike. Whew, boy. I mean, the timing, you have to have the timing correct on this card. You can't just throw it willy-nilly anywhere. If you just are going to jam it on like turn 2, when your opponent has like 7 or 8 cards in hand, they're probably just going to block it, and you're going to trade like 1 card for the 2 cards for 2 cards, which is still pretty good if you're slightly ahead. If you have like 7 cards, so there's 6. Going and overalling this card down to 6 and then pitching 1 to 5 to make them pay 2 cards is definitely worth it. This card is really good when you definitely though are winning. Like if you're already at parity or ahead and you can combo this card to a decent number, or they're tapped out and you have like a 10k you can put behind this, it will put in serious work. The best use obviously is to take your opponent from 5 to 3 with this when you already have beaters on board that will punish them. So yeah, this card is just super solid in basically every deck. I don't see a real reason to not play this card. When played well, this card is like a 9 because it will win you the game, will put you in a seriously good position to win the game, especially if taking your opponent from 5 to 3. If you're not careful with it though, it's probably about an 8. Like again, you can do much worse than a 3 cost 15k crit for 0. Like it goes in everything. Alright, so with those out of the way, let us talk now about the reprints. Alright, so here we go with the reprints. First up, we have Awakened Warrior Bardock. He is a Overwhelm for 4. When you play him, he gets Double Strike. So 20k Double Strike for 0 is really good value, especially for aggressive decks. I see yellow wanting to take this more than any other color. I would prioritize this higher if I was in a yellow deck. I'm going to give it an 8 just because 20k Double Strike is serious damage, especially for 0, and needs to be respected. For other decks, I'd say it's probably closer to a high 7. This is strictly like a red or a yellow card. Like if you're in red-yellow, you really want this. If you're in yellow anything, you want this. Red decks might not want this as much, but those are the two colors I think that should prioritize Awakened Warrior Bardock. Next up is Relentless Destruction Mira. 3 costs for a 15k. When it comes into play, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and discards it. So it's a free 15k and your opponent loses a card. So you're basically trading card for card. It is still a free attack, and much like we talked about with the SS3 Trunks, like that amounts to something. I'm inclined to give it a low 8 to a high 7. You might be wondering why I value this card, I think, a little bit better than Bardock. Well, Bardock, if you give your opponent too many cards early on, they might be able to turn it back on you. Like this card is kind of just, it's more versatile, and it's also easier to cast. Even if you had to hard cast this card for 3, like hard casting this card for 4 is meh. So yeah, I think it's just a little bit better. Even though this is a better card at closing out games, I think this is just more consistent. Next up is Shun Shun, Protector Majin. 3 cost 15k blocker is nice. When you play it, you can mill 2, so it does have some Overwhelm support. When this card is attacked, if your opponent's leader card is red or blue, this card gets 15k power for the duration of the turn. So Shun Shun is actually really nice. Like, really nice, because every leader is going to proc Shun Shun. So this is a 3 cost 30k blocker. That's massive. That is like absolutely massive, especially at common. I could see myself realistically wanting to play 1, maybe 2 of these in a lot of decks, just because if your opponent is playing like the aggro strategy, it's a great blocker. It's better than most of the blockers in the set just because of how beefy she is. It's almost impossible to punch through this without using a 3 cost 30k vanilla. It will protect you from all of your opponent's bombs. So yeah, I think of Shun Shun as a very contested card. I think amongst the players that are really like trying to go far in the tournament, I think it's a very, very strong card for a common. 30k blocker nothing for 3 is nothing to slouch at. Next up, we have Time's Choice Supreme Kai of Time. You guys already know Overwhelm 3, 15k power. When you play it, you can look at the top 3, look at a battle card, and place it on the bottom of your deck. The rest on your bottom of your deck in any order. So this card draws me a card. It's card selection as well as card draw, which is really nice. Any deck can play it. Almost every deck is almost entirely mono battle cards. There's very few instances of no battle cards. Like you probably have like somewhere between 2 or 3 negates, possibly 1 kill spell. So like, what, 35, 36 cards target? And everybody is looking for those precious one-ofs. So card selection is really, really nice. I think this is one of the better Overwhelm cards, if not the best Overwhelm card that is not at a higher rarity level, and you should be taking it early and often. Every deck could benefit from having 1 Supreme Kai of Time in it. Next up, we have Umbral Invitation Toa. So 4 costs 15k. It has Dark Overwhelm for 1, which you're obviously not going to do. So the main value out of this card is nuts. Like, it doesn't seem like it because 4 costs 15k is a terrible rate. But when you consider that most of the best cards in the format are the commons and uncommons that are 3 or less, hard casting this card for 4, notice it doesn't say Dark Overwhelm. Hard casting this card for 4 to Mind Control of like a 30k Rildo or like a 30k Grandpa Gohan is backbreaking. It is removal, and you also get an attacker out of it. So think of it this way: you get to kill one of your opponent's battle cards, and you get 2 battle cards for 4. That's nuts value, especially at the common rarity. And again, like Supreme Kaiotai, I feel like every deck benefits from having 1 copy of Toa in it. I just don't see a deck that wouldn't want to have one of these as a Tech 1 option. Now for the significantly worse Toa, Dark Rejuvenator Toa. Overwhelm 3, you pay 1. When it comes into play via Overwhelm, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with an energy cost of 2 or less and switch it to active mode. So the only real, like 3 cost 10k, too small really to get any damage in outside of turn like 2, maybe 3 if you're lucky. So stats aren't really winning any awards there, and at best you are untapping an Intensifying Power Trunks to draw another card, possibly put some more crit pressure on, or just untapping a 20k. I'm less than enthused about this. I think this is probably the worst of the Overwhelm cards you could be playing. It has its moments, like yellow decks and red decks really want this card. Like if you're in a red or yellow deck with a lot of 1-drop crit guys or like 20k guys, I could see you wanting this, and I would value it at like a high 7. But for everybody else, this is like a low 5. Like it's there, but like I'm not like super enthusiastic about it. Kami Global Unifier. This card is actually sweet in this format. It's a 1 cost that draws you a card, which usually gets you about a 5 or a 6 for me, but obviously you guys know you can pay 2. If your opponent overextends, you can just wipe the board. Wraths are really sweet, especially when they're stapled to cantrips. I really like Kami a lot. Good players obviously will play around it, so I can't give it really higher than a 7, but it is still a really, really good card. Next up is Bonds of Friendship Android 8. 1 cost 4k. You guys already know. You're never going to get the Son Goku childhood effect unless you are using it with the 2 cost that is like not super great. Red decks obviously have the crit one as well, that is the 5-drop that gets reduced. So, you know, there is some extra value in that, but it's unrealistic for you to get the Son Goku childhood effect. You might get it maybe like once, twice in a tournament if you're really building for it. The main strength of the card obviously is it searches out top 7 for a 30k colorless card, basically like a skillless card. Yes, it can be any skillless card, but if you have like 2 20ks, and like obviously like we said, every deck's going to want like 3 30k vanillas, this card is great. If you have at least 5 or 6 targets, I would still take the gamble. There's very few good options on turn 1. Digging 7 deep for the arguable best turn 3 play for every single deck means that I would want to pick up Android 8 early and often. I'm going to give him a 7. I think that he is one of the better 1-drops you can be playing in the format. And so with that out of the way, that is everything. That is the entire Draftbox 4 limited overview. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this series. You want me to do it again for Series 8, which obviously I'm super excited for Series 8. I love me some Android 21. I cannot wait for her. So yeah, if you want me to see me do it again, leave me a comment down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you really enjoyed it, consider subscribing if you're not already. We would appreciate it a ton here at 3XG Productions.